Well, hello there. My name is Bob Horne, and I am the Director of Administration for the Norfolk Community Services Board. And today we're going to talk about our Power BI server. This is the Power BI server space, and this is the link to get there. You can see it's CSB Power BI SQL1.norfolk.gov/reports/browse/NCSB. So now that we're here, let me take a minute and explain some of the functionality and some of the features of the Power BI report server. First of all, you can see this is the desktop for the Power BI server, and yours may look different. We do give access to our staff leaders so that they can access Power BI and the various dashboards that we've developed. First of all, there are three areas here that I want to point out. First is the folders area, and as you can see, we have several different folders. This is some arts substance abuse review back from April of 2017 through June of 2019 that we've archived. This is our development folder where we develop new dashboards and reports. These are old reports from 2019, and same here, 2020. And these are some reports that were based on Service Process Quality Management. That's what SPQM stands for. And we've kept those here in this folder. One of the things I want to point out is you'll notice at the top of each folder these three dots. These ellipses actually give you access to more commands. So I can move it, I can delete it, I can manage it. We would ask you, please do not delete any of the material that we've put out here. All right, next area up is these Power BI reports. You can see I've got 5 different reports on my desktop. This DBHDS, DD, and ECM, this is the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, Developmental Disorders, and Enhanced Case Management. These are reports for July through September of 2020. These are issues that the department looks at in compliance with the settlement agreement with the Department of Justice and things that our IDDD staff are doing. This next one is our CCS productivity dashboard. This is preliminary. You can see it's not the full month of February. It only goes through February 16th. But this goes from the beginning of this fiscal year through February 16th. I have a little star on it. That's because it's one of my favorites. NRHA Housing is Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority housing. These are geo-linked files for where some of our clients live who live within the St. Paul's area redevelopment project so that we can help them make sure that they are adequately housed and moved appropriately as Norfolk Redevelopment Housing moves forward with the St. Paul's project. This next one is this State Fiscal Year 21 DBHDS Performance Trends Dashboard. This is outcome measures that the state looks at over time. And this is the one from December 2020. And this is also marked as a favorite. That's why it has a star up there. And we present this to our board of directors on at least a quarterly basis. These are, like I said, outcome measures that the state looks at, and we can talk about that more at a later time. Finally, we have the transaction dashboard. This is also starred as a favorite. This one goes from February 1st of 2020 through February 25th of 2021. And we'll be spending more time on this dashboard. And again, it's marked as one of my favorites. That takes us through the Power BI reports area, and I want to point out these resources down here. There are 4 resources. The first is the CCS productivity workflow. That goes with this dashboard and report. Basically tells you how to work with it, gives you a screenshot by screenshot, how to go through and access and use the productivity reports that are available. The cybersecurity workflow is actually related to our Know Before training that the City IT requires us to do. We have to do Know Before training to maintain our network security. We usually get these on a monthly basis. If you don't complete your training, it's very important that you do, because if you don't, you can lose access to the network. We need to keep our network safe. There's been a number of city networks that have been hacked, and we're trying to prevent that. And one of the best ways to do that is to educate our workforce. And that's why we offer know-before training to our staff. This is a way that Priscilla Watson-Cook, who's our data analyst, can keep track of who has completed it and who hasn't, and send out reminders to staff to remind them that they need to complete that training before the end of the year. The Power BI Report Server Companion Process Workflow gives a general overview of Power BI, some of the things that it does, some of the things and how to use it, and some of the functionality. So that's a nice workflow to start with. I highly recommend that you take some time and look at this particular companion process. And finally, we have the Transaction Report Dashboard Training Guide. This does exactly what it says. It takes you through and provides training on the transaction dashboard. In some ways, it's going to cover some of the same materials that we're going to cover in this video today. So take some time and take a look at this, and I'm sure it'll help you. All right, we're going to go right into the actual transaction dashboard, and I'm going to just double click on it to open. And you can see it's opening, loading the data. It's quite a big file. We do upload this data on a weekly basis, so it's updated weekly. We're working to develop a SQL batch process that will allow us to update it daily, but we're not quite there yet. All right, that brings us into our main dashboard. This is the Norfolk CSB transaction dashboard. You can see it goes from February 1st of 2020 through February 25th of 2021. And these are our key performance indicators. And let me take a minute and go through what those are. So right now, this is the entire Norfolk CSB, all of our cost centers. And during this period from February of last year through February 25th of this year, we've served a total of 4,070 unduplicated clients. That's pretty impressive. Those 4,070 unduplicated clients have received $7.4 million in total claims charges. Now, claims are the total charge. We don't usually get paid the total charge, and we'll talk about that more as we move on. But these are the total in claims charges. There have been $1.2 million in adjustments. There's a number of reasons for adjustments, and we'll talk about that when we get to that screen. There's been $6.58 worth of transfers. This is a very minor amount, but that's a way that we can track the total transfers. Finally, we've pulled in, this is important, this is where we show for this period of time the total revenue that we've brought in. We brought in $4.3 million in total revenue. So that's important because we need to pay the bills, and this is based on our claims. So of the $7.4 million, we've brought in $4.3 million of that as revenue. We still have an outstanding balance of $1.7 million in accounts receivable. And this is very important because this is where supervisors need to focus to pull in the claims that have already been provided for services and pull in this revenue. Now, having said that, let me talk a little bit about these are the key performance indicators at the top. In the middle, what you can see is charges by cost center. So these are total claims by cost center. And right now they're sorted to, so the highest cost centers producing the most claims are up at the top. And you can see that's our developmental disorders, service coordination, and our mental health case management. Those are the top claim producers, and they're probably also the top revenue producers. And that's for this period. Now, one of the things I want to point out about this timeline is that I can sort this. I can go by year, I can go by quarter, I can go by month, which is how it is now. I can also go by week and go by day. I can sort it in any one of those capacities. And if I wanted to look at just this fiscal year, our fiscal year starts in July, so I would start in July and I would just drag it out through the end. You can see that our KPIs change. So this fiscal year, we've served 3,342 unduplicated clients for $4.2 million in charges, of which we've received $2.2 million, and we have $1.2 million in accounts receivable. All right, that's a general overview of this first KPI page, but let me point out some important pieces before we move on. you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, or excuse me, right-hand side, that we have this filters. So I'm going to click on this little out arrow, and you can see those filters expand. So I have a couple of filters on this page, and then I have some filters that are available on all pages. So the filters on this page are recorded service start, and it says it's for all, and then it's revenue, and then it says for all. And I generally don't need to do anything with these filters. As a program supervisor, though, this is the one that you're probably going to be most interested in, because you're going to want to look at your cost center. Right now it's set to cost centers all, and if I click on this little down arrow, I can see all the different cost centers, and they're all checked. So right now I'm going to uncheck the select all, so it goes down, and it hasn't deleted them yet. It's going to wait for me to pick a cost center. So I'm going to pick a cost center, so we'll go down here, and I'm going to pick Mental Health Pact to use as an example. I hope Randy will bear with me and Fee as I use them. You'll notice that when I picked Mental Health Pact that the KPIs changed. So I can see that, and one of the other things that I have to warn people about, sometimes when you change a filter, the time frame will change, and you see it went back to the entire period. So if I want to go back to this fiscal year, I'm going to select that period again. And I can see that during this fiscal year, that the Mental Health Pact program has served a total of 98 unduplicated clients for $491,000 in total charges, of which $91,000 was adjusted off, 16 cents was transferred, $77,000 has been received as revenue, and there's still $123,000 in outstanding AR. All right, so I pointed that out. One of the other things before we move on I want to point out is sometimes I'm going to go back to select everything here, and I can do that just by clicking on this little eraser, and it'll go back to everybody, okay? Now, having said that, sometimes I want to be able to focus in, and I can do that by clicking over here. When I go into this graph, you can see that there's this little focus mode. And I'm going to click on that focus mode. That makes that much bigger, and now I can focus in, and I can see much more clearly the cost centers down at the bottom and the charges along the side. All right, and if I hover over this, it'll actually tell me the mental health case management. It says revenue, that's actually charges. They had, for this same time period, for this fiscal year, $1.1 million in charges. All right, to go back to the other screen, I just click back to report. All right, and we're back. Now, one of the other things I can do is, before we move on to the next screen, the next one is charges by provider, but I want to point out something. When I'm in here, I'm going to go back to focus mode for just a moment. When I'm in here, I can actually click on this, and I can actually drill down. So if I right-click on this, it says drill through, and it goes to charges by provider. And as you may remember, that when we were in the main screen of the KPI, we could see that the next screen over was the charges by provider. This is another way to get there. Okay, so I'm going to go back and go back to that, and we're going to go to charges by provider. You'll notice the KPIs at the top are exactly the same. I'm going to go back and I'm going to select the Pact Cost Center again. If I can scroll down here. There we go, Mental Health Pact. It's just to reduce the number of providers on here. So now I have fewer providers, and you can see that it gives me all the different providers along the bottom, and then the claims that they've generated during this fiscal year on the side. Now, one of the things I can also do here is I can take this and I can actually go in and I can show it as a table. I can export this data. I can show it as a table. I can spotlight it, and that just kind of brings it under the spotlight. Or I can sort it, and I can go ahead and sort it by revenue. So that way I get my top providers on the left-hand side. So if I do that, now you'll see it goes from the top providers all the way down. So I can see that Thomas Forney is the top provider during this fiscal year in terms of generating charges for the PACT program. And I can see that he's generated $49,000, almost $50,000 in charges for claims coming out of PACT during this fiscal year. Thomas is a superstar. What can I say? Now, having said that, you can drill down even further. If we wanted to, we could select Thomas and we could see and go down to drill through charges by cost center. And here we go. Oh, it's taken me back. It drilled back up. Sorry. So we're going to go back to charges by provider. I can go in here and here we go. This is also a drill up and drill down. So if I select Thomas, I can drill down and there we go. Now, I'm going to make this, I'm going to go into focus mode here. And what you'll see is this is like, it looks like it's all over the place. But what this really is this is by client. So I can actually see if I go in here, I can go and explore and I can show as a table. And it'll take and put a table down below. There's no PHI. Let me just tell you that up front. There's no PHI in any of these dashboards. To be able to pull this back to an individual client, you actually have to have access to Profiler. These client IDs are Profiler client IDs. So with access to Profiler, you could go back, pull up this client ID, and see what this looks like. $8,409.79 in revenue was. And you can see that by provider and by client and the revenue and the cost center. So we haven't limited it to any providers, but if I wanted to do that, remember we talked about Thomas Forney, so I'm going to go back and since he's a superstar, I'm going to pick him, and you see now this changes to his clients. And I can do the same thing. I can go in here, I can export that data, I can go in here and I can sort it by various different ways or provide filters for various different things. All right, and that gives me just his clients right here. So I can see just the clients that he's seen during this fiscal year and how much he has generated in charges for each of those clients from the PACT program. All right. So let's go back to the report. And again, make sure that you select the right time frame. This is for this fiscal year. And again, Thomas has served, because I remember I'm sorted by Thomas and by the PACT cost center. So both of those are in my filters. So he's served 64 different clients for a total of almost $50,000 in charges, 16,000 of which has been adjusted. 10.4 thousand has been brought in as revenue, and he still has 22.7 thousand and outstanding AR for this fiscal year. So this becomes important as we look at trying to get revenue in. So again, the KPIs at the top of each board, and then this is charges by provider. That's generally what you'll see as the main focus of a particular dashboard based on what we've called it. The next one is unpaid services. Again, the KPIs, and we are this fiscal year, we are at PACT. Now you'll notice though that because this is not by provider, that provider filter disappeared. So I can see that again, this is for entire PACT 98 unduplicated clients, 290,000, 90,000 in adjustments, 77,000 in revenue, and 122,000 outstanding. So I can see that this is what their projection for budget was this year, and that's about where they're at right now. I can see it's by billing code and by direct service, and I can see what portion of it is billing code and what portion of it is direct service. And again, I can go into this and I can actually show this as a table if I want. And it just gives me the same thing that I'm seeing in the graph, but it gives me the numeric but I can get the same thing by just hovering over it. All right. So let's talk about adjustments. That's the next one that we're going to look at. It's the next dashboard. Again, we haven't changed. We're still at PACT. We're still at this fiscal year. And what you'll see is that there's a number of different types of adjustments here. And I do have over here a filter for this page that is adjustment type. And if you go into that resource that I talked about at the beginning, it talks about what each of the definitions of each of these adjustment types is so that you can better understand that. But let's talk about the ones that are under the control of the providers. So adjustment off not on file, that is one that is under the provider's control. So we can see that there's a couple right here that show up. Off not on file means that there is an authorization required for the service, but that authorization was not on file, and therefore that claim amount will not get paid. So I can look at that and I can select that and say, I just want to look at offs not on file. Now, you can see that only those two show up for a total of $1,100. But I can look at, there's a couple of others that also I want to point out. Contract adjustment is a adjustment that's made based on the contract we have with that third-party payer. So, for example, we may have a service that our claims charge is $100, but based on our contract with that third-party provider, we only get paid $80. So there's going to be a $20 contract adjustment in that case. All right, but that's not something under the providers. Denied because they're ineligible. That would be the client is receiving services for which they are not eligible. And we can see we've got one that was denied for not eligible. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is when we look at these things that are things that the provider has some control over, you can also see that during this period, and again, it switched the time period, so let me put it back to the fiscal year. All right, that we have 3 clients for 28 services by 10 providers, that there is $1,200 that we're not going to collect because of this. So these are things that we can do better at. Let's see if there's anything else. Denied, not a provider. This is actually a credentialing issue, as we're not on the provider panel. Incomplete info, this may also be a provider issue. When I click that, there's one that shows up that way, as incomplete information was provided to, looks like Aetna, Commonwealth Coordinated Care in this case. And this gives me the actual client ID, so I can go back and look at for those periods. And I can sort this down, like I said, I can go back down, I can sort this by weeks, by months, by day. So I can get the specific service date and track this back. All right, so this is adjustments. This is a good one to focus on to bring in revenue, because this is revenue that was left on the table that we cannot collect. All right, let's take a look at the next one, payers billed. Payers billed is actually a kind of colorful one, and let me talk about this. This is again for July. We're going to go through February. And you'll see whenever I change the time period, these things change to respond. So let's talk about 98 clients billed, same as we've seen in the other KPIs. 24 primary providers, 77,000 in revenue. And this is payers billed. This is just a graph, a kind of a pie chart of the payers billed for this time period. And this is different than the payer mix. So let me explain this. Payers billed is based on total claims charges. So again, remember, we may have a $100 charge for which we have a contractual adjustment of $20 because that payer only pays us $80 for that particular service. That's not going to be reflected here. So in a true payer mix, it's going to be based on receipts. It's going to be based on revenue. This is actually based on charges. And that's why there's this little disclaimer here. This is payers billed. To see the true payer mix, go to Profiler, go to the CSB insurance report. Second to the last page will pull that graphic up for you. And I can go in here and look at this for this fiscal year. I can see that PACT, again, remember we're still on PACT, and I have no other filters. Everything else is all. But I can see that right now looks like 56% of the people served by the PACT program have Optima Coordinated Care Plus. If I drill down, I can actually go in and I can see all of that is in mental health PACT. But again, I can look at this across multiple cost centers, and that way I can drill down further. I can actually drill down to, since I've drilled down into this, these are the clients that have mental health PACT services through Optima. So Optima Care Coordination Plus, when I click on that, these medical record numbers are only going to reflect those who are in Optima CCC Plus. Okay, so that's another way to look at your paying, how your payments are being made. So I can see right now, $42,000 of that revenue came from Optima, of that 77. All right. So let's talk about cash received year to date. That's the next one up. So I can see that this is actually, I'm not sure why, July, August, okay, through February, should be showing the mental health PACT program. It is in here, but it's also showing other programs. And I can see that these are sorted by top producers, so that's DD Service Coordination, Mental Health Case Management, Infant and Toddler, SAOTP, which is our Medication Assisted Treatment Program, Child and Adolescent Services, SED, Case Management, Eye Care, and then there's PACT right here. So this is cash received for PACT from July 1st through February 25th. And I can look at, and I say I want to do this, I can go and say, just tell me January. And I can see January is $6,500. Okay. And I can, again, look at any cost center that I wish. That's cash received year to date. Next, we're going to look at fees received current fiscal year. And let me explain this. This is our current fiscal year through January 31st. This is based on the fee collection report. This is more than just the revenue that comes in through Profiler. So there is revenue that comes in through, for example, CAS, get some grant revenues that come in. The top part of this is the agency-wide budget, fees, and progress. So you can see that based on, we had a $6.3 million fee budget total. We are at 2.5, that's 39% of goal. And since we're past half the year, this is underproducing, obviously. And this is by program down here. I can see program-wide budget, fees, and progress to goal. So if I go down here, I can look at, there's PACT right there. So I can see where they are for this. I can hover over it. I can see that they've received $74,000 in fees through the end of October. And I can see that based on the end of October, well, that's interesting. Fees received through 8/31/2019. Something is amiss here. So one of the things, this is a good point I want to bring out. So this is an opportunity for you to, and every time you go into this, there are some issues that you may find. When you find an issue and you want us to look into it, there are two things you can do. If you have a question, first of all, I would suggest you email that. We look at our email much more often to Priscilla Watson Cook, and she can assist you and get back, research it, and get back to you. But if you find something like this, that this is obviously off, this should be through January 31st, not through October 31st. So what you want to go up here to the upper right-hand corner and go to comments. In that comment section, you can add a comment that PACT revenues on the fees received current fiscal year only goes through 10/31/20 instead of 1/31/21. And then, oh, can't spell revenues. Packed revenues received in current fiscal year only goes through 10/31/20 instead of 1/31/21. I can post that. You can see I posted other comments in here. That will bring it to Priscilla's attention, and she can take a look at that, try to figure out if that's a reporting issue or exactly what the problem is, and get that corrected. All right, so then when I finished, I just click on comments again, and that goes away. All right, finally, we have fees received prior fiscal year. This is actually for the 2020 fiscal year. You can see that we had $6.2 million in fees budgeted. We collected 78% of that last fiscal year. So you can actually, between this fees received current fiscal year and fees received prior fiscal year, you can actually look at your comparisons over year. All right, that's a pretty broad overview of the transaction report. There's a lot more details in the resources. To get back up, you just click on this NCSB right here. This brings you back up here. You can go into this transaction report. This is downloadable and printable. You can see it's a Word doc. So I encourage you to go through this and use it. There's a lot of data here. We make this available so that we can make database decisions. And I hope that you found this training helpful. All right. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you around the CSB. Bye-bye.